And we are playing mono green Tron, and this time we're up against Mardu Pyromancer, which is the deck that Jerry Thompson took to the top 8 of the Pro Tour. Okay, so this is our opening hand. Obviously no Tron pieces, which isn't ideal, but we do have Ancient Stirrings Expedition map and Sylvan Scrying, so we've got plenty of ways to find the Tron pieces that we need. We've also got Dismember to deal with any early interaction, so it's not an ideal hand, but I don't completely dislike it, and I think I decided to run with this. Obviously not going to get Tron online until turn 3 at best, but we're going to lead with an Ancient Stirrings, and then we see all 3 Tron pieces, funnily enough, are on the top of our library, also a couple of Expedition maps, so maybe we should have just kept drawing cards, but as it is, we're just going to take one of these Tron pieces and pass the turn. This looting from our opponent, pitching Fatal Push and a Lightning Bolt. We're just going to Sylvan Scrying here for our second Tron piece. Find Urza's Power Plant. But has a young Pyromancer, but fortunately we've got an answer for that. We also draw into Urza's Mine, so we don't actually need this Expedition map to put Tron together. Which is nice, which means we can just kill this young Pyromancer here and not worry about how that might affect our progress. So that's pretty good. Young Pyromancers are generally a little bit hard to deal with, so very happy to have an early answer to it, and for our opponent not to have got any tokens. Opponent uses Collar Hand's command, makes us discard and destroys our Expedition map. Obviously unaware that we have the third Tron piece in hand. So we had the Forest there. I mean, I suppose there's an argument we could have discarded the Emrakul instead. It's actually, Emrakul costs 9 at the moment, so we're just 1 mana off casting Emrakul, as we do have 4 different card types. Obviously thanks to the help of our opponent, and obviously pitching our land helped out on that position as well. So I suppose that kind of makes sense. We are actually fairly close to casting this Emrakul at this point. So here we're just going to be able to cast Karn. I'm just going to tick up, given that opponent's not really got anything on the board, and we can just keep ticking up. I mean, I suppose we could have got rid of the planes instead, but I'm fairly comfortable with our position here. Class Thoughtseize taking the Emrakul annoyingly, and also the Dreadbore for the for Karn. Dreadbore's sort of seeing a bit more play in general now that obviously Jace is in the format, and there's a few more Planeswalkers around. But yeah, it's not something I'm used to running into, so had I known he was running Dreadbore, maybe I would have exiled something instead to get a bit more value, but so as it turns out, that got us there. So I'm bringing out this Oblivion Stone and this Expedition map here. Obviously our opponent doesn't have any permanents at the moment, so Oblivion Stone's not really doing anything, but we can set it for later. And we've got an Expedition map. But don't really know what we want to be doing with that just yet. Draw another Oblivion Stone, which isn't really very useful. And Inquisition is taking this stone, which is fine. I put a Fate counter on Expedition map just in case I need that, but seems unlikely. Chromatic Star, which finds us a Sylvan Scrying. I'm just going to get another Urza's Tower here to maximise our mana, and obviously make sure that we can cast an Ulamog or anything along those lines, should that be needed. Ancient Stirrings is going to find us an Ugin, so thankfully we have now found one of our big drops, and I'm just concedes to that. Slightly premature, obviously. In theory, I don't know how many Dreadbores he has in his deck, but he could have drawn another Dreadbore. But obviously our opponent didn't think there was a way out. I mean, I suppose realistically, he was in pretty bad shape. And actually, we could have Expedition mapped here, found Sanctum of Ugin, then cast the Ugin. I think we have enough mana for that, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we could have found Sanctum of Ugin, cast Ugin, and then found an Ulamog, which would have probably finished things off fairly swiftly thereafter. So yeah, so that worked out pretty well. Our opponent's offense kind of died after we killed off his young Pyromancer, and then we just had all the time in the world to do whatever we wanted. So that worked out pretty nicely for us. Okay, so here we are with the sideboard. In terms of what we want, I think this matchup generally seems like fairly good. I think the way we lose this matchup is by getting beaten down by an early young Pyromancer / Lingering Souls sort of combination. So I think really the cards we want are our sort of faster, earlier creatures. So I think Thought-Knot Seers and Thragtusks probably good cards to bring it in. Then after that, I guess we want the sort of the removal spells that can kill young Pyromancer, so Spatial Contortion and Warping Whale probably want to come in as well. Relic's pretty good here. Obviously they've got cards like Lingering Souls, Faithless Looting, and also Bedlam Reveler can be a lot more expensive if you don't have a graveyard, so you have to pay full price for it. So I think those are pretty good cards to bring in. I do like probably playing the additional Relic. We could play Grafdigger's Cage as well. Don't know if that's necessary, but obviously turns off all the flashback cards. But I don't know, I'm not sure about that one, whether we necessarily want to bring that in. In terms of cards we want to take out, I like Ugin. Khan seems good as well. Worldbreaker is perhaps not his best. I suppose there's not really a whole lot of things. They don't really run any artifacts that we would particularly want to exile. They might have Blood Moon, I suppose, although that's probably more awkward for them than it is for us in some ways. So yeah, I guess they probably don't run Blood Moon. So yeah, I mean, we could maybe cut the Worldbreaker, but I suppose it's got Reach, so it can block Lingering Souls tokens and things. Walking Ballista still seems good. Obviously a way of killing off Lingering Souls tokens and young Pyromancer as well. So that's nice. Emrakul can probably go. We might want to cut the top end again. Maybe cut one of these Ulamogs. Wormcoil seems good. It'd be very difficult for them to attack through profitably once we've got Wormcoil online. I believe it's done very good at killing them off if they go wide. Dismember good at killing off young Pyromancer. So yeah, it's kind of tricky. I guess we would shave maybe a few of these top end cards. I think we want to probably be in some of the Thragtusks, the Thought-Knot Seers, and maybe some of the more targeted removal. Bajuka Bog as well, actually, when talking about Relic, ways of exiling the graveyard. Maybe we want to... I'd probably bring that in over the Ghost Quarter. And then, yeah, I think maybe shave some of the top end Planeswalkers, etc. For some of our sort of cheaper cards. But we probably don't want to go too deep on that because ultimately I don't think they have a lot of ways to interact with our Tron. So we definitely want to be dropping Haymakers, and we don't want to sort of skimp on that too much. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the best way is. I think we're relatively well set up, so maybe not too much of a need to tweak with things too much, but I quite like Thought-Knot Seer, and I think Thragtusk could be good as well, because obviously life gain being an issue, but maybe Wormcoil does enough of a job in that role, I'm not sure. Okay, here we have game 2. This hand is not the best. I ended up running with this, but I think in hindsight we probably should have mulliganed it. Double Urza's Mind doesn't really do a whole lot. We're kind of relying on the Sylvan Scrying, and as our opponent has discard, he's going to get rid of that, and so we're kind of just stuck with a hand that is very slow. And has a turn 2 young Pyromancer, we don't have an answer for that, which is going to prove problematic for us. Thought Seizures again, which is fine, takes the Wormcoil Engine. I don't crack my Expedition map there because obviously if we draw a Tron piece, then we can decide to to find the missing one. Otherwise, we're just searching blindly. Drawing to Oblivion Stone, which is useful here, could potentially save us from this young Pyromancer onslaught. Such a power plant, although you can just choose either, to be quite honest. We find another Oblivion Stone, which isn't overly useful, obviously hoping to hit our 5th land. Unfortunately, our opponent has Collarhand's command to kill off the Oblivion Stone and hit us for 2. So now we're down to 4, and unfortunately we draw Ugin off the top. So yeah, so these are the kinds of games that we're going to lose, where they just stick an early young Pyromancer, and then basically we stall out. So yeah, I think in hindsight we probably should have taken a mulligan, though obviously it's slightly awkward given that they have Inquisitions and Thought Seizes, which should sort of interrupt our plans. But yeah, I think these are the kind of games that we're going to lose, and we have to be prepared for this, either by having early removal or having early creatures that can sort of block and prevent them having good attacks through us. Okay, here we have game 3. This is our opening hand. It's pretty good, actually. Obviously, there's the potential that our opponent takes our Ancient Stirrings, but I think otherwise fairly good. We've got 2 Tron pieces. We've got Chromatic Star. If our opponent doesn't take our Ancient Stirrings, then we're going to have a good chance of finding the 3rd one. So yeah, our Ancient Stirrings goes, which isn't too surprising. We're still in fairly good shape here, though. So crack the Chromatic Sphere, draw Thragtusk, drop a Relic. I'm just going to exile the Inquisition now. I just play to land and passes, which is fine. Could collect the Relic here, but I think it's going to be useful, so I decided that I would go for dropping the Oblivion Stone in here. And that way we can threaten destruction of the board later on. Our opponent obviously gets annoyed with our Relic and decides to wear and tear it, which is fine, to be honest. I mean, obviously we would like to have had Relic on the board, but we've obviously done enough, quite a bit to disrupt his plans. Obviously the reason our opponent destroyed the Relic is because he's got Lingering Souls, but we have Oblivion Stone on the board, so we do have a future answer on the way for Lingering Souls tokens, provided our opponent doesn't destroy the Oblivion Stone. So we get Chromatic Sphere, crack that into a Chromatic Star, which then finds us an Expedition map. So yeah, missed our 4th land drop, which is a little bit annoying, but we do now have a way to put together Tron, provided our opponent doesn't disrupt us in some way. Opponent flashes back Lingering Souls, passes the turn. I'm going to crack Expedition map. And play the power plant. So now we've got Oblivion Stone up. And we're planning to crack this at end of turn. We could crack it to prevent 4 damage, but quite frankly we're on 18 life. So I think we can happily take the 4 damage so that we don't crack the Oblivion Stone. Our opponent play a big threat thereafter in their second main phase and cause a load of trouble. So I feel pretty strong about that play. Opponent Thought Seizes us and takes away our Calm Liberated. Obviously a smart move. We're going to blow up the Oblivion Stone and get rid of these tokens. And then obviously we can follow up with Wormcoil Engine or Thragtusk or this Thought Seer or a Walking Ballista for 4. So yeah, our opponent just concedes from there, as that pretty much wraps up the game. He's only got 2 cards in hand, no board presence, and we've got Tron together, and we're going to be dropping Haymakers. I think we'd probably just play the Wormcoil here and then hit for 6 next turn, go up to 20 and don't look back, I think. But I mean, I say Thought Seer is also a pretty reasonable play here, as you can take away one of those last 2 remaining cards in our opponent's hand. But yeah, I think this match just seems pretty good, at least the way it played out here. The risks are they're fast hands where they play an early young Pyromancer and can go wide on the board. Certainly going wide is something that we can struggle with, because really Oblivion Stone's the only thing that we can do that really clears the board when opponents go wide. Or alternatively, we can stick a Worm Coil Engine, I suppose, which makes it a lot harder for them to attack through us. Yeah, I think otherwise they don't seem to have a lot of ways to interact with our Tron lands, because they're obviously 3 colours and they can't afford to have cards like Ghost Quarter and Field of Ruin. I imagine there's some cards in their sideboard that kind of help to shore up this matchup, like Fulminator Mage or Crumble to Dust or something along those lines. But otherwise, I think this matchup's kind of tricky for them. And as I say, and what we did is, if we are expecting them to sort of interact and mess with our Tron, then we can bring in our sort of smaller, lower cost creatures like Thragtusk and Thought Seer, and then just shore up the ground until we can put together Tron again and play our Haymakers. So yeah, I think this matchup seems pretty good all in all. I mean, I guess the risk is that they disrupt us with Thoughtseize, etc. And stick an early young Pyromancer or Lingering Souls, I guess, and fly over and beat us down. But in general, this matchup seems pretty good.